Hello, very welcome back to episode 3 of the Myths and Legends sessions. And if you tuned in with past previous nights, you'll have heard some of the stories of the old gods and demons of Ireland. If you tuned in last night, you'd have heard about the Wolf of Knocknagein and a little bit about the giants. Tonight, we're going to talk about Springhill. And to give you a bit of context, it's about 4 miles down the road from the Knocknagein Wolf. This entire region of Ulster is well known for hauntings, demons, gods, monsters. And this is just another in a long list of the very many stories that we could tell. Springhill House is situated about half a mile outside of the village of Moneymore. Moneymore itself was once known as being a huge woodland. And so you had the plain of the wolf that was Macrofelt. You had the more mountainous Des Martin, and now you had the forest. And in the forest are many beasts. But to begin with, we're going to talk about Springhill House itself. And I'm still a wee bit too afraid to go up there at night, so I took a wee visit here during the day. Springhill House probably has the most documented haunting in the whole of Ireland. I think to start it off, we'll just go through what the National Trust have to say about it. And on their website, they have a page dedicated to the ghost. Haunted by a friendly spirit who loves children. There's nothing scary about that. A sad, tormented soul, seemingly unable to rest, has appeared many times to staff and visitors here, particularly children. In 1816, a seriously depressed George Lennox Cunningham committed suicide, leaving his second wife, Olivia, to bring up their children. She also had to live with the guilt and grief of being able to save her husband. And it says here, from his demons. But what exactly were those demons? Who were those demons? But we'll stick on the National Trust for the time being. Her ghost is said to roam the house to this day, but most consider Olivia a benign presence, who's particularly fond of children, often choosing to appear to the youngest in the house. Usually most sightings seem to take place during the day, and she has been seen walking through the house or standing quietly by the stairs. All aspects of her hunting seem to be peaceful, and there's only one slightly unsettling story relating to the wooden cot that Olivia used for her children. And this was titled The Mysterious Knocking. During the Second World War, US soldiers billeted at Springhill, and they complained of a strange knocking noise coming from the night nursery. They asked for the cot to be removed, and for a time it was loaned to the Armagh Museum, and the knocking stopped. But after the end of the war and the return of the cot, the phantom knocking was heard once again. As ghosts go, that's not too bad. You could live with that. A wee bit of knocking in the night. It's an old house. Bound to be a bit of creaking going on. But yeah, that's not everything that happens in Springhill. If that was the case, why is it not being so famous? There's a story of 2 fishermen from the local village in Moneymore who were quite lazy that they didn't want to dig up their own worms to go and fish the Ballinderry for the yearly run of Dollahan. But they knew from walking the grounds that after a good heavy rain that the lawns of Springhill would be covered in earthworms, blackhead worms. Perfect for fishing and easy in the back. Now while they were up there, they gathered a good handful of worms, but it wasn't as plentiful as they thought. They did have a spade with them just in case, and as they went to dig the ground, one of them thought they saw something. And being two yahoos from Moneymore, whenever they thought they seen a ghost, they didn't run. Instead, they took a wee walk in round the grounds towards the dovecot. Now they're in trouble. As they got to the archway to go to the dovecot, they seen what was a shining light. And they walked towards it thinking there might be other fishermen up there, scooping up the worms at night. But as they got under the arch, the light began to move fast. Bolted past them. They felt cold. The light went through the gate towards the house, and it was gone. And without a second thought, the fishermen ran as fast as they could back to Moneymore. And it was a few years later that they were willing to come back and get their car. But at this stage, the sun had started to rise. To maybe set the stage a wee bit more is that while a stately home and stately people, Springhill wasn't the well-to-do manor it was made out to be. It was said at the time of Charles Byrne, one of the Ulster giants, that Springhill was the home of debauchery. There were wild parties on the lawns and on the grounds, freak shows, music, dancers. And at these parties, Charles Byrne was one of those freaks. As I said, he was a giant. And it was said that in his boots, he stood 8 feet 2 inches tall. And from here, he made his way to England, to London, but eventually met a terrible end. He carried the giant gene, which is very rich in the genetics of the people in this area. His body was stolen by a surgeon. His flesh was boiled of his bones, and what's left of him now remains hanging in the Hunterian Museum in London. It's a wee bit darker now. The rose-tinted glasses are maybe knocked off a wee bit. But maybe for this we have to focus in on George. If you look at Olivia's entry about George's death, she wrote that he suffered from melancholy, that he suffered depression, sadness. Now he had a lovely second wife, a lovely house. And yes, he did travel the world to fight wars. But there's another demon that lurks in the old forest of Moneymore. One more terrible than the friendly ghost Olivia. And one more brutal than any giant ever spawned out of Mid-Ulster. Before the house was built, Moneymore has a very rich history. At its earliest, it goes back to the 5th, 6th century. Huge battles were fought outside it. But in the woods was said to ride the Dullahan, the Headless Horseman. And there are different accounts of this throughout the years. As time goes on, those stories do change a little into the horseman and his carriage, but either way, it was the Dullahan. Now it is said that Dullahan rides day and night, kicking up an awful noise, and is sometimes accompanied with the banshee. Could it be this is the noise that drove George mad? Could his depression be down to the fact that he knew the Dullahan was there, and he knew the Dullahan was calling his name? And if he read any of the old books, he'd know that if the Dullahan called his name, and he had a gold coin in his pocket, at the very least, he could stop him in his tracks, buy more time. But his visit back home at the time he died was rushed. He got word while he was out serving for the army that his children were sick. And much like Olivia, he loved his children very much. And defying orders, he came home. Maybe, just maybe, he forgot about the gold coins. And knowing that the Dullahan was coming, shot himself. Interesting. There are demons out there that we'll never understand. But the old term of buying some time most certainly comes from the Dullahan. Springhill House is still open to the public to this very day. Now you can't get inside the house. COVID has been another factor in that. It's very plausible that if you do believe in the Dullahan, that if George Cunningham did have demons, the Dullahan could have been one of them. There have been many sightings of the Headless Horseman in Mid-Ulster, and very many stories come from the Glenshane Pass. So we can only guess what the Headless Horseman thought of a huge big road being put up his hill. Maybe he finds it easier to travel on. But I don't think I've seen a horse and carriage up there in a very long time. We've got a few more nights to tell a few more stories, and tomorrow we're going to change the script up a wee bit. Tomorrow we're going to have a little discussion on the warrior saints of Ireland. We've been talking about the demons and the monsters. Maybe it's time to talk about some of the people who fought them. So at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, tune back in again, and I'll have a couple of very interesting stories for you. For those of you who haven't seen the videos before, this is part of a crowdfunding project, and the information should be in the post there somewhere. As always, stay safe.